Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Tanner's Favorite Things. Today we have a box. This box is made in Japan. Inside the Made in Japan box is what you might expect to be a guitar, and you'd be correct. This is a Fender Made in Japan guitar, but what model is it? Before we take it out, let's take a look at this gig bag. It is a Fender branded gig bag. It does say Fender right there, and it has shoulder straps and a nice handle here. Not too much padding, but it does have some padding. So as far as cases go, better than nothing. All right, what's inside the bag, not the box? We have a guitar that is all freaking bagged up here. Let's get rid of this. And let's take a look at this brand new Fender Japan guitar. All right, what is it? It's the Fender Aerodyne Telecaster. So, what is the Aerodyne anything for that matter? Is this the only Aerodyne model? No, there's an Aerodyne Stratocaster. I believe there's a Precision bass and a J bass, and probably a Jazzmaster and the other Fender guitars as well. However, this is, of course, the Telecaster. And I believe the color is called Dolphin Gray. Looks kind of like a silver to me, but you know, it is gray. We'll call it what it is. It's gray. But what is Aerodyne? Aerodyne means that it's got a binding and a hard edge on it, basically, is the easiest way to explain it. And you'll kind of notice that it looks a little more similar to Gibson in this style of build, because Gibson will have a single ply binding here on their Les Paul Standard. Some Flying V's and other models will have a single ply binding, and that's exactly what you find here. And in order to do that, they have to square off the top and make the edge square. And that's not that uncommon with the Telecaster, which has a very kind of blocky profile to begin with. But on the Stratocaster, which is much rounder, it's much more obvious. And quite frankly, I had the option to go with the Stratocaster or the Telecaster from this series. I'm interested in guitars from Japan, number one, but number two, I've never had an Aerodyne Fender guitar, so I wanted to check it out, and the Strat just looked a little too weird. I'll go ahead and show you a picture here. This is what the Strat looks like, and if you put it side by side with a regular Strat, it looks a little, I don't know, it just doesn't appeal to me as much as this, the Telecaster, with its already kind of blocky shape, and it kind of classes the Telecaster up. And it's not like Fender doesn't do a bound Telecaster in their USA line or other lines. You'll find bound Telecasters in a couple different variations. I actually own one. It's a Fender Telecaster Deluxe. It's a US from 2007, and it has a binding around the side of it. So that's the Aerodyne kind of branding. This is not a new style. This has been around since, I believe, the 80s. Definitely the 90s, you find a lot more Aerodyne style guitars and basses. And of course, they are coming out of Japan for some reason. I'm not sure why the US or Mexico stays away from building these. I'm sure there are runs, and if you have any experience with a US or Mexican Strat or Tele that is an Aerodyne, let me know. Send it in the comments what year and whether you like it or not. I'm always interested in that. But this is a brand new guitar that is taking that older Aerodyne styling and kind of making it new, and that's what the marketing claims, at least. What's different about this guitar? I'm not sure, because I don't have an older Aerodyne, but I don't think the earlier Aerodyne guitars have a formed top, and this is actually a carved top, which is not what you would find on a typical Telecaster. So it kind of is a departure from the Telecaster in that regard. Kind of a carved top, the purfling or binding around the edge, and beside those two main factors, we also have the matching headstock, which I don't know if that's always the case with the Aerodyne series, but it's not usually the case with just standard Telecaster. So those are kind of the differences between a regular Fender Telecaster and an Aerodyne Telecaster. Beyond that, this one has newer voiced pickups that are specifically voiced for the Aerodyne model. Who knows what that means? I think they're trying to aim for a little more vintagey sounds. We'll have to check that out. But beyond that, there's nothing too different. You don't get the metal plate here. It's just bare, no pick guard, nothing, just the surface. And I guess having this carved top means you can't have that plate there. So I don't know, I think it's kind of nice, a little different than your everyday Tele. I like the knurled knobs, great finish. One thing that I have noticed about Japanese Fenders is their necks tend to be a little yellower than I prefer, and this one is not, you know, it's no different. This is a very vintagey looking neck, whereas the original Fenders from like the 80s and 70s and back, they become this color from the lacquer and the finish yellowing, and this is kind of like a little bit faking it is kind of how I feel about it. But it does have its own fretboard. It's a slab board, not just a single neck like you sometimes find on the Telecasters. 22 medium jumbo frets and 3-way toggle. Very simple guitar, but they've claimed to make it a little more modern. I think the neck profile fits into that category. It's a little more narrow, a little more C-shaped, kind of satiny as well. It's not a gloss neck at all, very satin, very nice feeling. And the fretboard is a 12-inch radius fretboard. Not too terribly out there. That's what most Gibsons are and a lot of Fenders. And locking tuners, a really nice feature. We'll have to see how they perform. I love locking tuners. I've been going through every single one of my guitars the last couple of weeks and changing the strings. And boy, do I appreciate when a guitar has locking tuners, because it just makes the whole process so much nicer. We have strap buttons in the usual spots. Nothing too crazy going on there. Standard string through design. If you're not familiar with the Telecaster, it is usually a string through guitar. You can sometimes find the ones that are top loaded, but those are, I believe, rarer than the string through. So string through is pretty standard. In addition to the Fender branding, you do get the Fender Aerodyne backplate and made in Japan on the back of the headstock. I do not believe this is a bone nut. I think it is some sort of synthetic nut, but I didn't see that spec on the listing. Maybe someone can educate me about the nut on this thing. But it does have a J22 number, so I think this is probably a 2022 guitar. I think that's what that means. And this has been sitting around. I don't think the Aerodyne versions of these guitars are as popular as the standard variants. I just think that the traditional Fender or traditionalist Fender players are really into not this, and that's okay. But I think that these guitars have their place, and I'm hoping that it sounds different than the other Tele style guitars that I own. I have one Fender, I have one Chandler, and one Peavey, and they all have Tele-like characteristics. They're all slightly different, but we'll see how this one kind of fits into that vibe as well. Made in Japan, always a pretty good bet that you're going to get a good guitar. It's not that they're better craftsmen or whatever, they just have a very rigorous quality control, and I think that they take a lot of pride in that aspect of their work, and it shines through in the final examples. And I think the Mexico and the US shops are pretty much on par at this point. They're all really freaking good guitars. But, you know, I think this is a unique Japanese guitar that I wanted to try out. It's a 25.5-inch scale length, pretty standard there, with, I want to say abalone, but I don't think it's abalone inlays. They're really cool. I'll have to see what that spec is, but they dance, and they're not quite as colorful as abalone, but they do have some color, and they do dance in the light. So nice inlays, really nice appointments to make this a not very expensive guitar. This guitar is under $1,000 new. I think it's $899, so we'll call it $900 even. And you get a really high quality instrument at that price point that, you know, it competes with what you will get in a Fender Mexico or potentially Fender USA. We'll have to find out. So that's my first impressions of the Fender Aerodyne Telecaster. So far, so good. I'm really impressed with the build. It showed up looking great. Let's plug her in. All right, so here we are with the Fender Aerodyne Telecaster made in Japan, and I've played it a little bit, and I think that every single setting on this guitar is usable. It's a really great joy to pick up a guitar and just be delighted by the sounds that it makes at every toggle switch or turn of the knob, you name it. This guitar really has it going on. So before we talk about kind of what's under the hood a little bit more, let's go ahead and hear what it sounds like. So this is the bridge pickup, and what are we plugged into? I've got my guitar plugged through this pedal board all the way to the Marshall Mark II 1987X Plexi head. That is a 50-watt guitar head, and it's being fed into this orange 2x12 cab featuring two Celestion creamback speakers. This has really been one of my favorite cabinet and speaker combos that I've found so far, so hopefully it's representative of what this guitar sounds like in real life. So let's go ahead and hear what this thing sounds like. The sound is being captured by one single Sennheiser E906. That's a dynamic microphone, and it's on the right speaker, so just keeping it simple here. I have my mic being fed into the camera, so that won't be picking up the sound from the guitar. So let's go ahead and hear some sound, and then mess around with the settings. So really nice, full sounding, bright bridge tone. We have this tone knob, let's just wind it. It does exactly what you would expect, but it's pretty usable, not all the way here. This is 0 tone. Sounds pretty underwater there, but if we move it to about 50%, it mellows it up quite a bit. So tone knob does just what you would expect, and it affects the sound in quite a wide way. So I'd rather have too much adjustment than too little, so that's nice. The neck pickup here sounds just as good. It's a little mellower as well, as you might expect. Really nice neck and bridge tones, very Telecaster-like, but they do have a bit more oomph, I would say. Less vintagey and more kind of forward-facing, whatever that means to you, but they don't lack in punch at all. They're very punchy, and when we kick on the dirt, you'll hear that. But let's go ahead and hear the middle just for fun. I found it to be just as useful, kind of the Goldilocks, not too bridgy, not too necky, but sounding like this. Wow, just a great sounding guitar. Anywhere you put that switch, it's gonna sound good, and you're not gonna wanna move out of it until kind of you get tired of it. But either way, I'm back in the bridge here. Let's go ahead and add some dirt and hear what this thing sounds like, just with a little bit extra gain involved. So before we do that, I do wanna discuss two things. Number one, this bridge. This is a Babicz bridge, I believe is how it's pronounced, B-A-B-I-C-Z, Babicz, and it's not a standard Fender product. And quite often, you'll find Goto products on Fender Japan or other Japanese-made guitars. I'd say that Goto is kind of the biggest the leader in components in the Japanese market. So it's not uncommon to see Goto tuners on a Fender Japan or any other Japanese made guitar. But in this case, it's a Babix, and this bridge is burly. It's thicker than your standard Telecaster ashtray style bridge, but like I mentioned, it is a string through design, so it's really just holding these saddles and creating all kinds of sustain. You can hear it without any sound through the amplifier, and just my microphone on the lapel picking it up is really resonant, and I think this bridge is really helping transfer a lot of those vibrations to the body and help that resonate a bit better. So kind of a nice accent, something you could do to any of your Telecaster guitars, by the way. I guess you could buy this bridge aftermarket and swap it out. So a nice little addition here that's right from the factory from Fender, and I think this is a really nice bridge. Point number 2. That's dead quiet. I turned the volume all the way up. You can hear I got sound out of the guitar, but it's virtually indistinguishable when you have the volume at 100 versus 0. So that's always something I appreciate in a guitar. It's not very often that you can pick up a guitar and just plug it in and turn up the volume and not have some weird squeals. So really nice quality control and just general build quality from Fender Japan in that regard. I do believe that they shield their cavities differently than the Fender US. We'll have to open this compartment up and take a look at some point. But just know that it's quiet. And if you have a guitar that makes any noise that comes from Fender Japan, check it out. You can usually find that there's a ground that was missed somewhere, but it's very, very rare and much more common to have a Japanese guitar that needs absolutely no attention to be a rock solid player. And that's what this is. I'm really looking forward to bringing this into a couple different scenarios. But let's go ahead and go right to the distortion DS1 pedal. This is a Boss pedal, the classic. Adds a little bit more noise to the signal, but not bad for a Telecaster at that too. These guitars are definitely prone to 60 cycle hum, and the older Fender Japanese Telecasters have been known to have kind of crappier components, especially pickups, and they get a little whiny or, I don't know, less than desirable. But this one is just like dead solid, punchy, quiet, all the things you ask for in a pickup. Here's our DS1. Pretty chunky, I would say. I was gonna say chuggy, but it's not quite chuggy yet. It's approaching that, and really much closer than you would expect to chugging with a Fender Telecaster, but that's what this guitar is capable of. And especially the bridge. Let's hear that neck pickup with the same DS1 just for kicks. May not be as usable, but here we go. Really nice. This thing is very versatile. Neck pickup with a DS1, not always a usable combo, but hey, I would call that usable any day. Let's tempt fate here and see what the Metal Zone sounds like with this single coil bridge pickup. Already a little noisier than one would hope, but That's pretty common with these single coils and this pedal, but it's pretty gainy, so let's hear it. You gotta cut it immediately not to get that hum, but it's pretty rowdy. I don't think we will get anything out of the neck pickup with the metal zone. Whew, that's pretty boomy, I gotta say. It's louder, that's for sure, but it's a little muddier, and it's just taking all of the things that you like about a neck pickup and muddyifying them. So I wouldn't exactly go that route, but you can definitely go tube screamer into neck. So the neck and the tube screamer all day long sounds great. The bridge, of course, sounds great with the tube screamer. What a classy guitar. I'm really psyched about this. I knew that it was going to be kind of classy when I bought it, but I didn't realize that it would just feel so good and really be fun to play all around, and that's the beauty of getting new instruments and really experiencing what the world has to offer. And I understand that I'm in a unique position. Being childless, of course, gives me the opportunity to buy guitars. So I really do feel blessed to be in the position I am in to be able to experience these guitars. And you know, I don't take that for granted. I want to share them with you. That's why I do this. I obviously don't make any money off of this, but I do want to have a record for myself, but more so, I want you to understand what this guitar is capable of and maybe kind of give it a little love, because I think this guitar was being blown out just due to sitting around too long. Like I said, it's a 22. It's the end of 2023 currently, and I don't see why. I think if people were to play these, they would just fly off the shelves. And maybe that's it. There's just not enough access to these at Guitar Center or your local guitar shop or whatever. But I think we have a unique opportunity in this era where shipping guitars is not as sketchy or scary as it used to be. So buying on the used market is really a great option, and hopefully you can take a flyer and pick up a Fender Aerodyne guitar. I would highly recommend it. It's really been a fun player. I'm gonna incorporate this into my arsenal here as I go and report back with probably another update down the line. But either way, this is a really beautiful, fun guitar. It has plastic on this neck pickup, which I'm gonna take off right now. Booyah. And other than that, this thing is ready to rock. Fender Japan Aerodyne Telecaster in Dolphin Gray, I guess, with the matching headstock. Super. So go ahead and get your own. And if you do have any questions about this or this bridge or any other unique feature about this guitar, let me know and I will report back as soon as I can. But this has been Tanner Knight from Tanner's Favorite Things. If you do like this content, like and subscribe. That always helps. And I hope to see you on the next one.